All right, y'all got your warning there. Here we go. So the first things that we are going to talk about is why we collect that data. And Ben's going to help me because I don't have the notes, and he's going to tell me who's going to speak at the various points. So I think this is me first, right?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay. So, you know, while we are using this information as Missouri Main Street that you collect for us, it really is the way that you guys are measuring the impact, the return on investment that you're having in your district. And so all of these things are really for your benefit also, more so on the local level. But of course, then we're collecting it, putting it all together, and we're sharing it with other entities, the Missouri Department of Economic Development, National Main Street, and others. We use it in grant applications and things like that when we're seeking funding to bring services to our communities. And so it all helps, but really the purpose of this is to help you guys gauge and measure what's happening in your district so you can use those for your purposes, for having conversations with city officials, having conversations with sponsors and investors. And we'll show you some examples here in a bit. But really taking the heartbeat of what's happening within your district and gathering that information. And, you know, I think most of you know I'm a numbers nerd, a data person, so I love to see this type of information. But we're also going to show you how to paint a picture and put a story to those numbers too. So we appeal to a lot of different audiences, and we'll talk about the different ways to do that. So part of this is measuring that success that we're doing. And so, you know, once you start collecting that information over a period of time, you now have the ability to look at trends. And so this is information we've collected on all of our Main Street programs, looking at various different things. And these have been used in different presentations or potentially in grant applications. But by having that multi-year information really helps you paint a picture and look at how you're doing as a district. And I always talk about the top right photo there, the graph. And what that is showing is that from 2006 to 2019, net new jobs that were created within our Main Street districts from that time period, 2006 to 2019. And years 2, 3, and 4, you can see there's a big downturn. Well, that was the downturn of 2008 that happened. And you can see that our Main Street districts were losing jobs, but they did not lose jobs as much as our national economy lost. During that time period, more jobs were being lost than were being gained. Well, you see our lowest year there, which is year number 4, we still had a net gain of 26 jobs in our Main Street districts. And so while it was a big downturn, we bucked the national trend in that we still were creating jobs in our Main Street districts. And so that tells a great story. And by us being able to collect that information, we were then able to tell that story. The bottom right, we need to update that. This is an older graph, but we'll share a little later that we're seeing our volunteer hours of our Main Street district starting to increase again. Of course, they went down in 2020 because of the pandemic, but they have shot back up in 2021, and we're seeing that trend continue. So we're watching that information also so that we can possibly help with services and different things that we do. And you would do the same things in your district. And this is that part of using that data then to tell stories, using the photography to put a face and a story to those numbers. You know, the bottom left is new housing that we created in downtown Excelsior Springs. And so, you know, we asked you guys to collect new housing units. And so, you know, sharing that information and how those things happened can be more impactful. Numbers are great, but you notice all these pictures except for one have people in them. And so we want to add that people component as we're telling that story. And then also, as we talked about 2 slides ago, looking at trends. And so knowing your vacancy rates in your downtown district and watching those over time, but also tracking, you know, what is our ratio of retail businesses to service businesses to government entities, watching those over time, particularly if you have a transformation strategy of attracting more restaurants. By then collecting this information over a period of time, we can look, how are we affecting our restaurants within our downtown district? Are we moving the needle? Are we not? And so that this all helps us gauge whether we're headed in the right direction or not. And then also helps us, do we need to change course, or if we've met our goal of adding 5 new restaurants in our downtown district, what is our next goal going to be? And so this data can help us understand maybe where we want to go next. And then we need to brag and celebrate. As Main Streeters, I think we are very much into moving right on to the next project. The event is done or the project is done, and we don't take the time to celebrate and brag about what we did. And so we're going to show you some examples of how to do that, but make sure that we do pause and celebrate those things. So Ben's going to talk about how to collect, right, Ben?
Yes.
Okay.
How do we collect this economic data? So first, who submits it? So it's really honestly anyone that's in the affiliate, the associate, and the accredited communities. Those programs that have a contract with Missouri Main Street Connection are all have to submit this quarterly report as part of that agreement. And so that also includes anybody in the community empowerment grant program, St. Louis Main Streets, any of those My Community Matters, any of those programs in those first 3 tiers that have an agreement with Missouri Main Street Connection has to submit this data, this information on a quarterly basis. So that's everyone. So who collects the information? Well, really, it's anyone that's on the Economic Vitality Committee, anyone that's involved with this process, even outside of the committee itself, is responsible for collecting it. It's important to remember that it shouldn't just be one person that is collecting this data. It really takes many people to collect this information. And so it's important to get that entire committee, to get the board members involved with this process as well. And also important to remember that it's not just the Economic Vitality Committee, those people that are interested in that aspect of it that use this information. The other committees can actually utilize this data to help measure the economic activities of the different events, the different projects that they are doing. And so it's important to get them involved and make them at least aware of this information that's being collected and being submitted to Missouri Main Street Connection. So where do you need to actually collect this information? Well, that is in that boundary that the local program actually has, that they define as their downtown revitalization district there. And so it's whatever is locally established as the boundary of the district is where we collect this information on reinvestment statistics, private investment, public investment, any of that information is within that district itself there. So where do we find this information? And so it needs to come from multiple sources. One of the biggest ways and one of the best ways is honestly just to have multiple eyes on the street. I talked about earlier how it can't just be one person that is helping to collect this information. It needs to be multiple people that are helping to establish relationships with business owners, with property owners, with city, county officials, any economic development entities in the community need to establish these relationships with these kinds of entities to help collect this information. Because in order to get a comprehensive look at the economic activity that's happening in your downtown, it can't just be one person. Let's say something happens within a week that one person is on vacation and we're not able to collect that information. We need to have multiple people that are able to step in to help collect that information and make it just a whole organization-wide activity in order to do this. So there's some best practices. First, it needs to be, like I said, a whole economic vitality type activity to divide and conquer at each monthly meeting. Let's say, for instance, that it is one volunteer's responsibility to track all of the private investment that has happened during that month or during that quarter. That needs to be then laid out at the Economic Vitality Committee meeting, at the board meeting there too. So try to section off that responsibility to different volunteers with that. Also, it's old school, but keep a clipboard of all the information that is collected. Go around, make that an activity that at the committee level to go around and to note that investment that is happening. There may be something that is not submitted or collected that needs to be. So I would encourage you to do, walkarounds as a committee there to collect that information, or you can even keep it in digital files or whatever works best for you. I mentioned earlier, partnership with the city, the county, economic development entities is incredibly important, because you need to pull that information sometimes on how much private investment has happened with a particular building, if they were able to pull a building permit on it, but also even the public investment part of it too. You're going to need to build those relationships with those entities in order to actually track that public investment that's in there. Again, break it down into manageable parts. Like, one person can't do all of this. They can't, take on the whole elephant themselves. They need multiple people that are coming in and helping to make this happen. Also, print the reports before you actually submit it. Make sure all the information is correct, that it's complete before you actually submit it. Take some time to kind of digest, to make sure that everything is on there before you actually submit it, because once you submit it, you can't really get it back. Also, have sign-in sheets for volunteer hours. So as opposed to trying to collect all of the volunteer hours at one time before you submit it, collect that as you're going on. So have these volunteer hours at events in order to collect that information, but also at committee and board meetings as well. Make this a continual process in order to do this. So I'm going to turn it back over to Keith. He's going to talk about the actual submission process, because again, it is a little bit different. The information is still the same, but the format's just a little bit different. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith to talk about that.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in the intro, is that this is the real reason we invited everyone to participate, even if you've gone through this training before, is that we are changing over the platform that is used to submit this information on a quarterly basis. Our old submission tool was embedded within our website. We didn't have any ability to change it. And so we're switching over to a platform called FormStack. And that will allow us to have the flexibility to make changes as we move forward, but also pulls it out of our website, because we are going to be transitioning to a new website sometime later on this year. And we just don't have any support on the old form. So we're already making that switch over. So this is what it'll look like when you get logged in, and we'll kind of talk about that in a bit. You're going to go to the same place you've been going, and we're just going to switch the link out to this new link, and it's going to take you away from our website. But once you click it, this is what it's going to look like. To get started, you just click the start button. A little caveat though, Ben tested this for us, and if you hit enter in between the different fields, it actually is going to submit the form, and you're not quite ready for it at that point. And so you don't want to hit enter until you're finished at the end. You'll see it's a dynamic, it's a dynamic form, so we're going to kind of show you how it works. It's very clean, but just want to remind folks not to hit enter as you go through. So once you get in there, this is what it's going to look like. And again, most of this information is the same as it has been before. There's a couple small changes to what is being collected, and we'll cover those as we go through. But we need to know who's filling this out. If for some reason we have a question about it, who would we contact? And so, name, organization, and email address, what year you're submitting it for, and then what quarter you're submitting it for. We also give you the option, if you don't have any economic data to submit, let's say you didn't have any investment taking place or businesses opening or closing, you can click no, but you still would certainly, I'm sure, have volunteer hours and minutes to submit. And so it'll take you down to that spot. So just like the previous form, we're going to start gathering this information and compiling it to put it in this form. So the first thing is public investment. So this is investment done by a government entity, city, state, county, a federal government, if you have maybe a federal building within your downtown district. And so these are what projects are taking place, the cost of those projects, and the source of funding. And so this would include sidewalks, streets, lighting, public bathrooms, new public signage, anything done on those government buildings, water and sewer projects, park installations, beautification projects, those sorts of things. anything taking place on public property, basically. And so, we had a question earlier today about, let's say that it's a nonprofit that owns the building, but it's a, public restrooms. Well, it's who owns the building or the property that the work is being done on is where you would classify that. So that would be done on the private side, not the public side. You also only submit this information once the project is finished. And so that's the same thing when we get to the private investment also. It's only when the project is finished that you report that. And so these are the things that would be reported. What is the name of the project? Let's say it's the 3rd Street overlay of asphalt, the address, 3rd Street, or if it's a building, you'd put a building there. What was the dollar amount of the project? And then what was the funding for that project? And so we even have a little spot there for other, just in case we don't have something listed there about how it was funded. Now, for a large project like a street overlay or a sewer project, sewer and water project that maybe extends beyond the Main Street boundaries, you would need to work with your government officials to ask them to estimate what the cost of the improvement was that went through the Main Street district. And they should be able to help you with that. Taking total cost divided by how much the length of the project, those sorts of things, they should be able to come up with a pretty good estimate of that. And then this last box down below, you'll see when you get into the form, it's very clean. You're only going to see one spot for public improvement. But if you click yes, you've got another public improvement to report. Another box is going to open up for you to enter that information. If you say no, then you're just going to move on to the next one, which would be private investment. And so these are things done on private property, private buildings. And so this includes facades, slipcover removals, awnings, anything on the inside as far as rehabilitation and restoration goes, exterior signage, roofing, heating and cooling, windows, anything attached to the building qualifies for this. And so we're going to ask for a lot of the similar information. What is the address of the building? How much was invested? And then where did the funding for the project come from? And, we always get this question, how do we know how much their improvements cost or the rehabilitation cost? Well, it comes down to those relationships. Ben mentioned earlier, you do want to work with your partners as far as the city goes if there was a building permit issued. And usually building permits do have an estimated cost of the project. But really, it's that personal relationship that Main Street should have with those property owners to go have a conversation with the property owner. We're not going to disclose individual projects and how much they cost. All this stuff is going to be rolled into bigger numbers from all the communities before they're reported to the state and to National Main Street. So they don't have to worry about that. But you do want to get that estimate. If for some reason the property owner won't tell you that, it's always good to then have a construction related person on your economic vitality committee that can help estimate what those costs were based upon what happened to that building. And so different ways to go about achieving that. And again, I'm sorry, let me go back. If you say, yes, I have additional private projects to report, another space is going to open up for you to enter your second project. So then we want you to collect and report on new buildings or additions. And this is private property related. I'm sorry, we did change that. We did add to the form where you could report public, and you'll see that in just a second. So we want to know, what is the address of the project, how much was spent, and whether it was a new building or an addition. And so you can see here in the bottom left, we do have a space for you to denote whether it's a new public building or a new private building or a new public addition or a new private addition. So we did update that when we created this new form. And then we have damaged or lost buildings. And I know we have a couple of folks on the call that are around the Brookfield area. Unfortunately, Brookfield had a fire yesterday. They lost 2 of their downtown buildings yesterday. And so this is where that information would be reported, damaged or lost buildings. So we would be asking for the address, the amount of the damaged or lost buildings. So that'd be the value of the building if the entire building was lost. If for some reason there was a fire just on the top floor and the building could be saved, we would talk about the damage just in perspective to the part that was lost and what it would cost to rebuild it. So then the building status, was it damaged or lost or other? What was the cause of the damage or lost? And then of course a spot there if you have additional ones to report. And then we want to know about new housing units. Housing is very important in our Main Street communities. And so this would be address and number of units and monthly rent. This is what it looks like on the form. And here we want to know for type of unit, is it owner occupied or is it rental? And you can pick more than one there. Want to know that sort of thing. When we talk about average rent, if you click the rental button there for types of units, another box will pop up that will ask for the average rent. And if it's a multi-unit, let's say there's 3, 4, 5 apartments, just average, if they're different sizes and different amounts, just average that number and give us an average for the rent there. Then the whole business relocated to the district. So we want to talk about those new businesses. And we'd be looking for the name of the business, how many employees are attached to that. And then the new part of that is recording the minority owned designation. And so you can see on the form here in the bottom left, we want to know if it's a woman owned, veteran owned, or minority owned business. If you don't know or they don't wish to disclose that, we did put a box in there for that. You can also pick multiple. Let's say that there are 2 owners and one's a woman and one's a veteran. You can pick multiple there just in case. And when we talk about full-time employees, or when we talk about number of employees, we're talking about FTEs, which is full-time equivalents. And so, for example, if there are 2 part-time employees, that would equal 1 FTE or 1 full-time equivalent. And so you would report how many employees they have added. And so this is also for startups, new business, but also if a business from elsewhere in the community or elsewhere in the state or wherever relocates to your Main Street district. So it's not just all new startups. It could be that a business moved into your district from some other location. And that's that new part that we talked about. But then we also want to know the opposite of that when a business closes or moves out of the district. And so it's kind of the same information, but in reverse. Business name, address, whether they closed or moved out of the district, number of employees. And again, we're talking about FTEs or full-time equivalents, and then a spot there if you have multiples to report. Then we also do have the category for business expansions or reductions, and this mostly pertains to the staffing side of things. And so looking at the form, we'd want to know the business name, the business address, whether it's expanding or reducing, and then the number of employees that were added or lost. And so, this is probably one of the hardest things to track as a Main Street organization. Because, if I take an example of a restaurant here in Excelsior Springs, I don't know if they traditionally have 6 employees or 8 employees. I don't always see them all there at the same time. So this is where, when Ben and I talk about annual business visitations that the Economic Vitality Committee and the Board of Directors should be doing, this is where you would figure out whether they were expanding or contracting. Because one of the questions on that business visitation is, how many employees do you have? And so when you start doing this then annually, you can then look at last year's number and look at this year's number and go, they added 2 employees since last year. We need to report that. And so you can report that as you do those visitations, or you can report it on an annual basis if you do all of the visitations at one time. But that's the best way to gauge this. Now, the second best way is to have that good relationship with your business owners, and they self-report that to you, saying, hey, Gina, we added another employee this year, and so we know that Main Street collects that information because you told us that, and so we're self-reporting and letting you know that. I have a feeling that doesn't happen very often, and it is very hard to track. So this is probably underreported, but those annual business visitations is the best way to accomplish that. And then we have this other category. The Missouri Department of Economic Development wanted us to track this number because they wanted us to be looking at how Main Streets, particularly when they are high functioning Main Streets, are business recruitment tools for the community as a whole. And so by having a strong downtown, are we helping in attracting new industry to the community as a whole? And so these are the things that we're looking for related to that category, and high quality job really pertains to, do they offer benefits? Is what that definition is. And so that can be industry, but it could also be if you have a new fast food restaurant open up in your community, and they offer health benefits, that would be classified as that. So these are things outside of the district. These are also things I kind of talk about as being things that make the news. You know, XYZ Corporation moved to our community and they added 50 jobs. That's the type of thing that would go on this form. And so this is where that relationship with the city or economic development entities for your city or county are important, because they'll be tracking these things also. And then, as you guys know, and we've talked about earlier, volunteer hours. Ben mentioned having those volunteer sign-up sheets everywhere. Highly recommended, so that we are keeping track of those things and that it's just easier to do. And so there's 3 categories that we ask for help with, or we ask for you to report, and that is board member hours. Ben, am I still doing all right?
Yes.
Okay, I had an unstable connection on my side, so I just want to make sure I didn't freeze.
Yeah, you were frozen for a sec, but you're back.
Okay, great. And I see Cheryl must have lost her connection too. There we go. So we ask you to collect those volunteer hours into 3 different buckets, one being board members. So this is when the board meets, you would record those hours for each person. So if the board met for 2 hours and there were 5 board members present, that'd be 10 hours that you would record. But also if the president goes and meets with the city administrator and has an hour meeting, you would record, the president would record an hour that he spent doing something outside of that board meeting. The treasurer spends 5 hours a week working on books and accounting and all those sorts of things. You would record those 5 hours for that treasurer. So board keeping track of those hours, and then also committee hours. Anything done in the committee meetings, anything done to get ready for a project or an event, because the next category is just event hours, and that's the day of the event. So all the planning beforehand goes into committee, but the actual day of the event would be under the category of event hour. So that's that definition for those 3 buckets. And that's what it looks like on the form. You would just record those as hours. I mean, we have people that also record, you know, we had 400.25 hours last year, or last quarter for the board. So, you know, we'll take quarters and halves, and that's all right too. Okay, we also asked you guys to report training sessions attended. And so this pertains to anything that's related to downtown revitalization or Main Street that comes from us as Missouri Main Street or National Main Street. We also want you to collect the information for workshops that pertain to our mission related to historic preservation. So things that come from the National Trust or Missouri Preservation. But then also things related to leadership or management, both for staff and volunteers, that helps you with your Main Street work. We'd want you to record that also. And so this is what it looks like on the form. What is the name of the training that you attended? How many people attended? And what was the cost involved? And so, you know, we have a workshop coming up in Joplin on April the 1st. So if you were reporting that, you would put Missouri Main Street Workshop in the training attended. You would put number of attendees. Let's say you had 3 people go, and the cost of that was $300. Now we want you to record the cost of there's registration, but also if there were costs involved in getting there, transportation and things like that, overnight accommodations if you went to the National Main Street Conference or the State Main Street Conference. And so that the total cost that we're talking about there. And then you guys have been submitting board and committee minutes through the previous application, and we're going to have you do the same thing here. It's just a little different in that this platform only allows one thing to be submitted per attachment. And so what we're going to ask you to do is combine all of your monthly reports together. So let's say you have your board meeting, you have your organization committee meeting, your promotion committee meeting, your financial reports. We want you to put all that together. And on the form, we have put a link to, I can draw here, we put a link to Adobe offers a free online tool to combine all those things into one PDF. And it'll take PDFs, it'll take Excel documents, it'll take Word documents, and it'll combine it all into one PDF document. So we want you to do that for each month that you're submitting. So let's, for example, January, you drag and drop all of those documents into this platform, and it's going to turn it all into one PDF. And then you would save that on your computer and then click this choose file, pick that file, and it's going to attach it to this submission. And so you would do that for each of your months that you are submitting. And so making it easy to do, but also making it easier for you guys maybe to store records on your side too. So now they're all in there per month as opposed to being spread out in various locations. And this is what the form, oh, sorry, I already showed you what the form looked like. This is then the next, the next piece of this. I thought I fixed this. I fixed it in one way, but we had a little hiccup in the last presentation. But we've made it easy for you guys to report new board members. And we've always had issues with you guys have an election or you have a new board member that you've appointed because someone resigned. And so we always want to make sure we have a constant, good contact information for your organizations. And so we've added that into this form where you're able to, if you say you do have new board members for the quarter, say yes, then these boxes open up and you can add in their name, their address, their email, give us all their contact information, what month and year does that term end for that person, and then who did they replace? And so giving you a place to record that for us so we can update our records. And then the same thing for officers. A lot of our Main Street programs do board elections in January, some do them in July, some do them in September. And so it's just hard for us to send out one notification to get an update on officers. So we've done that also. If you say that, yes, you've had some officers change, these boxes open up and then you can supply us with that information. So just trying to be a little more streamlined. And then we're not going to go into this real detailed because we don't have to do this until fourth quarter, but fourth quarter, we do ask you to submit a little extra information on your average commercial rental rate per square foot. And then what is your ground floor vacancy rate? And so that's only done on the fourth quarter submission. And then this form is a little different than the previous, where in the previous one, you could save your submitted reports, or you could save your report and come back to it later on. This one has that feature, it's just different. So at the bottom of the form, you can click the Save and Resume Later button. And what it's going to do is send you whatever email you put in the top of the form. It's going to send you an email with a link to go back to the form and finish it. So you do still have that capability, it's just different. But if you click the submit form, you're done. It's submitted it to us. You're going to get a confirmation email with all of your information as a PDF, and we're going to get a confirmation email with all of your information that you submitted. So the other piece of this is that this does not save your submitted reports like the previous one does. And we'll talk about that in just a second. If you forget to submit something, just like in the past, just email Ben that information and we'll add it to your report. And it happens, we understand. And that's why, Ben did talk about that clipboard. I would always keep a copy of my previous quarter submission because I'd kind of forget about, did I already submit that or did I not? And so, there's those times where you either forget or you've double submitted. So just reach out to us if you've done that. So then for submitting the information, this is the calendar. It's the 15th of the month after the quarter ends. So for the first quarter, which is what we'll be getting into here real quick, as soon as we get to the end of March, the first report will be due on April the 15th. And Ben is really good about sending out reminders. In that reminder, he's going to send the link to the form just in case, but we are hoping to have our backside of things fixed, that when you click on the place you used to click on to start your report, it will take you to this new one, but we'll include it in that reminder email also. So for those of you that are new to this, know that you have to have a login in order to do this. It's under the member login in the top right corner of our website. And so once you click on that, if you already have a login, you'll just log in like you normally did. If you don't have one, you'll need to create an account. Just understand that if you create an account, it's going to take us 24 to 48 hours to approve your login before you'll be able to use it. So it can't be a last minute thing. And so you used to go to that quarterly performance report button there. You're still going to go there. After April 1st, we're going to switch it out to the new link. If you go there and it still looks like the old one, don't fill it out because we're not going to support that form any longer. Just email Ben, but we're pretty sure we can have that switched out by April 1st. Now, for those of you that have been submitting information for some time, they're all stored under your submitted reports, which is that second red oval. All of your old reports are in there. We highly recommend that you go in and download all of those submitted reports because it's going to go away in probably 6 months. And so if you want copies of those, you'll need to go in and grab those before the website gets updated. Now, we have copies of all of them too. We save them when you submit them because we're entering them into a spreadsheet with everybody else's to get a total number. But we highly recommend you go and collect all your old reports and store those. You can save them as PDFs. You can print them off and put them in a binder, whatever works best for you. All right, Ben.
All right, so what do we do with this information? Well, it's incredibly important to share this information. So don't just collect and sit on it. You need to share this information on investment, all of these great things that are happening in your district, with the city, with the county, with those public officials, to show the impact that Main Street is having in the community here. And so you can do that on a quarterly basis. You can do that on a semi-annual basis, on an annual basis. It's just important to not just collect the information and then sit on it, but to share it with those people that need it. But not only city and public officials, but also with the community at large too, through press releases, through Facebook, even through different publications that you can do as well. And so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what that looks like in some communities across Missouri here. So the one on the left is from Cape Girardeau. This is from their statistics in 2015. And so it's just impactful visual representations of their numbers here. And so one of the more impactful things is their public and private investment. They just lumped those two numbers together there. In 2015, they had over $3 million of public and private investment. And so that just tells a powerful story of what's been happening in their district there. And so you need to make sure to continue to package that information. And so the one on the right is just for Q2. And so let's say you had especially a really impactful quarter, you had a couple of big projects that came in there too. Share that information, continue to share that information with people. So that is a quarterly update from Downtown League Summit. They had some great.
It was during their downtown days, which attracts,
as
you can see, 100,000 people. And so big quarter, they wanted to share that.
Impactful. So keep sharing that information, especially as those big things happen like that. So the one on the left here is from downtown Excelsior Springs. And so you can see that they had 11 new businesses open up during that time. The private investment, 289,000. The one on the right is actually our statistics that we were able to pull when we held the national conference here in 2018 in Kansas City. And so again, just keep sharing those numbers with the public, with all of those stakeholders that need to know this information, that are looking for this kind of information. And so make sure to present on a very consistent basis, again, whether it's quarterly, whether it's annually, semi-annually, to city council, to civic groups. Be really intentional about presenting to your chamber of commerce, your Rotary, all of those different types of civics groups in your community. They're looking for this kind of information. Sometimes they're looking for speakers as well. And so put yourself out there and make sure to keep sharing that story over and over again, and keep putting this information out in front of communities here. And so I really like what Downtown League Summit does with their sponsorship package that they do in communities. And so you can see what's pulled up. So this is a sleeve. So a part of the sponsorship opportunity is they're really intentional about saying what they do, all the events that they do, but also what they've accomplished. And so they've been able to take their statistics over a multi-year period and package that information all together there. And so you can see since 2009, you can see in the latter part of the what we've accomplished portion of that, they've been able to have over $13 million in private investment, $48,000 or 48,000 volunteer hours, 550 net new jobs. And so when you're able to have this information and accumulate it over time, you can share those powerful stories of investment over time since you started taking statistics. And so that's why it's important to pull all of this information too. It's also important too because this information is going to be on the accreditation and all the assessment information that many of you guys have already started as part of being part of that, the affiliate, the associate, or the accredited tier. This information is going to be incredibly important to keep. So you can show it on the accreditation information that we've already been able to share with you last year and are sharing with you right now. So make sure to keep it for that accreditation information there.
Ben is your contact if you have any questions as you're going through and filling out the new form for the first time, or you're filling it out for the fifth time. Ben is the person to ask questions, and we do get those questions. There's some things sometimes that are a little different. We've had folks who have business incubators in their downtown and want to know how they handle the new business startup that happened in that business incubator. There were 5 new businesses that started up in the incubator this month. What do we do? How do we count those? Well, we worked with a couple communities that have those and we count them. But unfortunately, if the business then incubates out of the space and into a new building, we hope it's downtown, but if it's not downtown, then we have to count it as a lost business and lost employment. But hopefully through that whole process, though, you're gaining some new businesses. Also some larger projects that may open up in phases. Right now, Lee Summit is opening up a large apartment building and it's opening up in phases. And so we worked with them and they wanted to report each phase kind of as it opened. And so, working through some of those things. Feel free to call if you have questions related to something that's just a little odd. We'll help you figure out how to report it.
Speaking of questions, Sarah had a really good one in the chat. That is one of those like weird questions that you mentioned. So she asked, what if the facades were funded in part with public funds and in part by private funds? In Kirksville, they have a program where the city helps to contribute towards.
It's a TIP program. And of course, as you know, Kirksville, we have to ask you the weird questions.
Well, that's not so weird though, Sarah, in that we do when you're reporting those private business or private investment pieces, we do ask you where the funding comes from for that. And so there is a spot on there for private funds, but then there's also a place for historic tax credits or state or federal grants. So you could click the other and put city TIF or something like that there. But it would go under private funds or under private improvements because the building ownership is in private hands. But when it comes to funding, we do like all of those mixtures of fundings. And so we did allow places for you to click multiple items for funding, how the funding took place.
So we've been doing that wrong because we put it under public because it's only like 10 or 20% that's private funding. It's all TIF funds for the majority of it. So just so you know, we've been doing it wrong then.
Okay, well, we'll go fix that. We can go fix that, Ben.
And I can get the breakdown from Ashley of what percentage was public or private or whatever too.
Yeah, and we don't need to know that really.
Okay.
Well, all we want to know is what the total was. And then we do want to know where funding comes from because we want to sometimes we talk about that with folks, but we're not concerned at what the percentages are. And again, as we said earlier, and this came up at the noon one also, is that it really depends where it's reported is depending who owns the property. And so if like the question that today came from Fayette is their Main Street organization owns a building and they're going to put in public restrooms. the public restroom part, he was thinking through it into the public side of things, but no, it's private property and they're going to let the public use it. And so that would be recorded under private investment because that's where the ownership is of the property.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. What other questions do you guys have? You can feel free to unmute and ask, or ask in the chat, whatever's easiest for you. We're monitoring that chat. But yeah, if you want to unmute, even turn it too. We're happy to take some questions here at the end.
So I will share a story while you guys are thinking too. We've had some large investments taking place in various communities. Washington, Missouri, they got a new bridge over the Missouri River, and it is within their downtown Main Street district. And so the improvements, the new bridge, counted as investment in the Main Street district. Of course, it was public. Joplin just got a new courthouse in their downtown district, in their Main Street district. And so that new construction was reported. And so think about those projects that happen within your district. Sometimes, a new highway comes through or something, a big state project through your downtown district, you would record that also. The thing is, we're recording all those things that happen in our district because we want to record what's happened. Have we affected that or not? That's always up for question. We always get that. Well, Main Street didn't really have anything to do with that. Well, they made a choice to make that improvement based upon something. And so, we're hoping that our Main Street districts are part of that conversation, and the efforts that you're doing, you're just supporting those efforts in your downtown.
Yeah, for instance, if there's like a new overlay that's happening as part of a streets project down there, they have prioritized that because of things that are happening downtown. They could have prioritized other parts of the community, but they saw what's happening in downtown, and so don't discount some of your efforts for some of those things.
Yep. Megan in Trenton has a university, a college next to there. Anything that, as long as the college is within their district, if they're upgrading some student housing, that would be included in your investment. That would be a government, it'd be a public. Although, I can't remember, Megan, if that's a private college or if it's a public college. If it's a private college, it would go under private. If it's a public institution, it would go under public.
Yeah, it's a public community college.
Okay, yep, so it'd go under public investment.
Okay.
Any questions? I think everybody on this call mostly has done this before. Alyssa might be new to her.
And Alyssa, as you have questions with it, please just reach out to me with it. Alyssa's the new director, and so this is kind of new. Some of this, and so it takes a while to kind of get into the groove of submitting, and collecting this information, and putting those things in place there. So please reach out to me with any questions that might be weird, or questions that you're just like, I don't know how to do this. How should I submit this, or how do I do this? Keen and I have both done this for many years, and so we're happy to help with that.
And also realize you're part of the Missouri Main Street network, in that, last year we had 39 Main Street communities submitting information, submitting data. And so you're part of this bigger group. And so, the proper recording and collecting of this information is so important, so that we have a good story to tell as far as Missouri Main Streets, all of you guys in your journey. Go ahead, Gina, unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have no idea how that popped up there.
Okay, all right.
Just waving high.
High five.
Hi, yeah.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. We'll let you guys get on to the rest of your evening. We appreciate you joining us. And again, if you have any questions, like we've said, please feel free to reach out. We're here to help.
Yes.
And we will put this, we'll send out an email to everybody that participated with the video link also, so you can reference it if you have any questions. So thanks for joining us. You guys have a good evening and a good rest of your week.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You.
Thank you.